Off the southwestern coast of Mauritius, thousands of tons of sand pour endlessly over an underwater cliff into a 4,000-meter abyss, creating what appears to be the ocean's most impossible phenomenon, a waterfall beneath the sea. From above, the sight defies logic. The bright turquoise waters of a shallow lagoon appear to cascade dramatically into the dark blue depths, exactly like a massive waterfall plunging thousands of feet. The illusion is so convincing that first-time viewers struggle to accept what scientists tell them. No water is actually falling, no drain is swallowing the island, and what they're witnessing is one of nature's most spectacular optical tricks. The phenomenon occurs just off the Morne Peninsula, a UNESCO World Heritage Site where dramatic underwater topography, persistent ocean currents, and stark color contrasts combine to create an image that shouldn't exist. Yet there it is, visible from helicopters and aircraft, looking precisely like millions of gallons of water pouring into an oceanic void. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from and how you're doing today. As you settle in, consider this. Mauritius sits in the Indian Ocean surrounded by thousands of kilometers of open water. Yet this extraordinary illusion occurs in only one specific location where unique geological conditions align perfectly. Today we're explaining one of the ocean's most photographed mysteries. We'll explore the underwater landscape that creates this illusion, the science behind why our brains interpret it as a waterfall, and why this particular spot off Mauritius produces an effect seen almost nowhere else on Earth. Because understanding how nature creates this impossible image reveals something fascinating about both geology and human perception. The story begins with Mauritius itself, a volcanic island that emerged from the Indian Ocean floor roughly 8 million years ago. Unlike continental landmasses that gradually slope into deeper waters, Mauritius and the surrounding Mascarene Islands sit on a relatively flat underwater plateau called an ocean shelf. This shelf extends outward from the island at depths rarely exceeding 150 meters below sea level. For comparison, that's about the height of a 50-story building beneath the waves. Across this shelf, the water remains relatively shallow, creating the brilliant turquoise lagoons that make Mauritius famous among tourists. But at the southwestern edge of the island, near the Morne Peninsula, something dramatic happens. The ocean shelf simply ends. Not gradually, not with a gentle slope, but with a precipitous drop that plunges from 150 meters to over 4,000 meters, a vertical distance greater than the depth of the Grand Canyon. This underwater cliff face creates the fundamental stage for the illusion. The transition from shallow shelf to deep abyss occurs over a remarkably short horizontal distance, creating one of the steepest underwater slopes in the Indian Ocean. The second crucial element is sediment, specifically, sand and silt constantly being eroded from Mauritius coastline and coral reefs. The island's beaches consist largely of white sand derived from crushed coral and shell fragments. Wave action, tidal movements, and coastal erosion continuously liberate this material, suspending it in the shallow lagoon waters. Ocean currents around Mauritius, driven by wind patterns and the Earth's rotation, move in predictable directions. Along the southwestern coast, these currents flow consistently toward the edge of the ocean shelf. They act like conveyor belts, continuously transporting suspended sediment from the shallow lagoon toward the precipitous drop-off. When this sediment-laden water reaches the shelf edge, physics takes over. The sand and silt particles, having been carried horizontally across the shallow shelf, suddenly encounter the steep underwater slope. Gravity pulls them downward, and they begin cascading down the cliff face into the deeper waters below. What ocean mystery fascinates you most? Share your thoughts in the comments below and I'll research it for a future video. Your questions shape what we explore on ancient underwater mysteries. This is where the illusion becomes convincing. The descending sediment creates a visible plume extending from the shallow waters down into the depths. From an aerial perspective, the only vantage point where the phenomenon is visible, this plume looks exactly like water pouring over the edge of a waterfall. The color contrast amplifies the effect dramatically. Shallow lagoon waters scatter light differently than deep ocean waters. The turquoise color of the lagoon results from sunlight penetrating to the sandy bottom and reflecting back through relatively clear water. This creates the bright, almost glowing blue characteristic of tropical shallows. Beyond the shelf edge, where the ocean plunges to 4,000 meters, light cannot penetrate to the bottom. The water appears dark navy blue, almost black in some lighting conditions. This stark transition from bright turquoise to dark blue creates a visual boundary that our brains interpret as the edge of something. Exactly like the edge of a waterfall where water goes from flowing horizontally to falling vertically. The cascading sediment appears as a lighter shade between these two extremes. Against the dark deep water, the sand and silt create a visible plume that looks white or light blue, exactly like the frothy, aerated appearance of water falling over a cliff. Our brains see bright water, a definite edge, lighter material descending, and dark water below, and conclude, waterfall. This is a textbook example of an optical illusion created not by any deception, but by our brain's pattern recognition systems making reasonable but incorrect assumptions based on limited information. From directly above, lacking the three-dimensional depth perception we'd have from a side view, our visual processing interprets the scene in the most familiar way, as a waterfall. Please hit that like button, subscribe to Ancient Underwater Mysteries, and turn on notifications. Your subscription means everything to me as this channel continues growing, and your support helps me explore these incredible natural phenomena. The Morne Peninsula location adds historical and cultural depth to the natural phenomenon. The peninsula is dominated by Morne Brabant, a 556-meter basaltic monolith that served as shelter for escaped slaves in the 18th and early 19th centuries. These maroons created settlements in the mountain's caves and on its inaccessible slopes, using the natural fortress as protection. The peninsula gained UNESCO World Heritage Site status in 2008, recognized not for the underwater waterfall, which is natural and not man-made, but for its significance in the history of slave resistance and the fight for freedom. The juxtaposition of this powerful cultural heritage with the stunning natural illusion adds layers of meaning to the location. Viewing the phenomenon requires an aerial perspective. You cannot see the underwater waterfall from the beach or from a boat on the water. The illusion only works when looking down from sufficient height with the proper angle. Helicopter tours represent the most popular viewing method. Multiple operators in Mauritius offer scenic flights specifically designed to showcase the underwater waterfall. These tours typically last 15 to 30 minutes and circle the Morne Peninsula multiple times, allowing passengers to photograph the illusion from various angles. The experience is consistently described as breathtaking. The combination of Morne Brabant rising dramatically from the peninsula, the brilliant colors of the lagoon, and the impossible-looking waterfall creates a vista that seems too perfect to be real. Seaplane tours offer an alternative, providing the unique experience of taking off and landing on water while still affording excellent views of the phenomenon. Some visitors hike to the summit of Morne Brabant itself, though the view from the 556-meter peak, while spectacular, is less ideal for photographing the underwater waterfall than helicopter altitude. Drone photography has become increasingly popular, allowing visitors to capture high-definition images and video without the expense of helicopter tours. However, drone regulations in Mauritius require permits for certain areas, and operators should verify current rules before flying. Safety concerns about the underwater waterfall prove unfounded. Despite appearances, there's no actual vortex or drain that could pull swimmers or boats under. The phenomenon is purely visual. The sediment movement is gradual, not violent. Ocean currents in the area are strong. This is what drives the sediment flow, but they present no greater hazard than currents anywhere else around Mauritius. Swimming, snorkeling, and diving all occur safely in the general area. However, the steep drop-off and strong currents mean that only experienced swimmers should venture close to the shelf edge, and diving in deep water areas requires proper certification and equipment. The best viewing season runs from September through December, when Mauritius experiences drier weather with less chance of rain interfering with helicopter flights. The phenomenon is visible year-round. The currents flow constantly, but aerial tours depend on weather conditions. The underwater waterfall has become one of Mauritius' most photographed attractions, appearing regularly on social media, travel blogs, and promotional materials. The image's viral nature stems from its seemingly impossible appearance. People scrolling past such photos often assume digital manipulation, unable to believe a natural phenomenon could look so perfectly like something that shouldn't exist. Scientists studying the illusion emphasize how it demonstrates the importance of perspective in how we interpret natural phenomena. The exact same underwater topography, viewed from a boat on the surface, appears as nothing more than a gradual color change from turquoise to deep blue. Only from above does the arrangement of colors, shapes, and contrasts trigger our brain's waterfall recognition pattern. What aspect of this optical illusion intrigues you most? The geological forces creating it, the way our brains interpret the colors, or perhaps the fact that it exists in only this one location? Comment below and share your perspective on how nature creates such a convincing trick. Similar underwater shelves with steep drop-offs exist elsewhere in the world's oceans, yet few produce comparable illusions. The combination of factors required, white sand, clear shallow water, dark deep water, strong consistent currents in the right direction, and the proper shelf edge steepness, rarely align as perfectly as they do off Le Morne. The Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland actually contains the world's largest underwater waterfall, a true underwater cascade where cold Arctic water flows beneath warmer water and plunges down a 3,500-meter drop. However, this real underwater waterfall is completely invisible from the surface, detectable only by instruments measuring water temperature and salinity. The Mauritius phenomenon, by contrast, is an illusion that looks exactly like a waterfall despite being nothing of the kind. It's a perfect inversion. The real underwater waterfall is invisible, while the fake one is spectacularly visible. The underwater waterfall off Mauritius reminds us that nature doesn't need to be supernatural to be spectacular. No hidden drain threatens to swallow the island. No mysterious forces are pulling water into an abyss. The explanation involves nothing more exotic than sediment, currents, and optical principles humans have understood for centuries. Yet the illusion remains powerful even after understanding it. Knowing that sand and silt are cascading down an underwater slope doesn't make the aerial view any less stunning. If anything, understanding the precise combination of geological and oceanographic factors required to create this effect makes it more impressive, not less. The Mauritius underwater waterfall stands as evidence that our planet still produces wonders capable of stopping us in our tracks, making us question what we're seeing, and reminding us that nature's creativity exceeds anything human imagination could design.